HR tech, WorkTech, and investment are transforming the future of work. Are you in the know? Welcome to the WorkTech podcast. Join host George LaRocque for expert insights on the trends, M&A activity, and strategies shaping the workplace. Brought to you by oneworktech.com and the Work Defined Podcast Network.
Hey, it's me, George LaRocque. Welcome back to the WorkTech podcast. Hey, last week we put out a Market Insider email newsletter that really seemed to strike a chord with the WorkTech community. Got a lot of feedback. I love it. Keep it coming on that newsletter and anything, actually. And in essence, in the newsletter, we talked about how we're officially moving past this experimental phase of AI. And I'm seeing this at WorkTech. In just the last few weeks, the inbound briefing and deal flow at WorkTech has undergone really a welcome shift. We're seeing a move away from generic wrappers and a pivot towards substance over hype. So today on the podcast, we're diving into 2026 is the year of architectural rigor and what that means for founders, CHROs, talent leaders, and investors. So let's dig in. So the most fascinating evolution happening right now is in strategic workforce planning. There is a lot going on, but this conversation around SWP really intrigues me. Now, strategic workforce planning has been around for a really long time. It originally emerged in the 90s as we started to integrate and align HR with business goals. So headcount planning at the time morphed into more workforce planning. And like so much of what we've seen in modern HR today, strategic workforce planning had its roots in the military, right? The one of the largest employers on the planet, at times the largest, always the largest in North America and the US. So they set a lot of precedent for how we manage people, and it's a huge case study in many ways. But moving into the 2000s, as competition became more and more global, strategic workforce planning was well aligned with the war for talent, which was the study and book that came out of McKinsey at the time. That the war for talent was embraced by the private sector due to how it redefined an employer's relationship with talent. It really called out the shift that we saw take place in the global workforce and job markets, into the 2000s. It wasn't perfect, but it really was a timely piece of content and research that we could all at least get on the same page around. Now, all that being said, strategic workforce planning has largely been aspirational in the private sector. It's a concept that is really well understood, but putting it into practice has proven very difficult. It's akin to skills-based organizations and skills-based hiring, right? We really understand it. We really understand all the levers to pull on and how to make this work. But the data requirements, the change management, the integration, the everything that it takes is, only the few can really get it right. So, but what we're seeing now with regard to strategic workforce planning and many things, but definitely SWP, is the traditional model is being turned on its head, largely because of the emergence of agentic AI, and these autonomous agents are now becoming part of the capacity equation. So we've got the AI and the agents becoming, the technical foundation in the stack, empowering SWP, but also becoming a part of the workforce, the capacity that's being planned for. So it's no longer just a headcount game, right? We have to look at this through this complex marketplace of humans and agents, focusing on skills, tasks, and outcomes. And I think the most exciting part about all of this is that what used to be purely aspirational is now becoming plausible. It's very much aligned. I mean, skills are a big part of this, but very much aligned with skills-based initiatives, right? Very aspirational in the past. Now suddenly, building a taxonomy is something we can do quickly. That wasn't true a couple years ago. Anyhow, staying focused on SWP, to make it all work, the data requirements are astronomical, right? You need what we call a predictive engine of workforce intelligence. That's a mix of external macro data on talent pricing, internal skills data, and a clear understanding of your agent capacity and what's available there. Everyone is dancing around this same concept in different ways. It's sort of the agentic brain. Again, this what was aspirational is now becoming plausible. So that agentic brain isn't just a buzzword. It's the shift from simply, guessing your headcount to architecting your entire output capacity by integrating external talent data with internal skills and agent capacity. And this is quickly becoming a reality, and it's a conversation that I'm having in many different places. So the transition from theory to practice is exactly what we're seeing, such a massive shift in the market right now. It's moving us away from that experimental phase and toward a much higher standard of architectural rigor in order to pull this off. So that sort of brings it all together. But with that plausibility comes new risks. So let's look at one category. Let's look at hiring, for example. That's a well-trodden path, if you will. Generative AI has already flooded the hiring funnel, leading to unmanageable candidate volumes and homogenized resumes that perfectly fit any job description. Now, this has led to a massive spike in fraud almost overnight. And as agents become more integrated, both externally for candidates and internally for the employer, the complexity scales. We're entering this era that requires more than just basic security. Enterprises need rigorous policies for how agents are selected, exactly what data they can access. And without this framework, you're creating a massive unresolvable liability. Now, add to that the connection between agents isn't always just a one-to-one connection. It can be one-to-many, one agent connected to one agent that is then connected to many or many systems. That comes with its own set of risks. So this new era that we're moving into is one where good enough is not an option. If you can't account for the one-to-many complexity, for example, of these agentic relationships and the liability that comes with them, you aren't building a solution. You're building a massive compliance headache. And this is a great segue into what we're actually looking for in the market right now. So because the risks are so high, I think and a lot of this overall direction in the market, our focus at WorkTech has shifted to a very specific sort of high conviction strategic mandates and deal flow is what's being put on our plate. So shifting gears there, what are we hunting for? So I think this, I use this term of flight to quality. The broad conversational chatbot has lost its luster. The market is demanding verticalization, technology built for specific industries or complex skill sets or complex problems being solved, definitely with a direct through line to ROI. The more quantitative, the better, but also qualitative. So because of this, at WorkTech right now, we'd love your help. We're actively seeking high conviction deal flow for our partners. And if you're building in these following areas, we need to talk. So what are we looking for? We're seeing a great demand for verticalized agentic models. So think surgical AI for high compliance industries or high compliance categories. These verticalized agents can be anywhere in the employee life cycle, if you look at the world that way, or in anywhere in the workflow that HR, talent leaders, WorkTech would be considered. We're looking for what I always refer to as sort of the business, connective tissue. So products that bridge the gap between HR and people ops and, for example, the office of the CFO or line managers. So as I'm looking at 2026 and I'm listening to the mandates that most of my friends in corp dev or private equity or VCs are marching with, there's a lot of, post-hire focus that we're anticipating, and that connection into the line comes with a more direct connection to the business and the business goals that we talked about earlier. Okay, so that's another area, but broadly we can get into details if anybody reaches out. Voice agent innovation is another area that I'm seeing great demand. specifically in the hiring process and, of course, in the employee experience. So while there's a healthy debate right now as to the experience and whether candidates or employees have a desire to engage with a voice agent, I can tell you that the train seems to have left the station on this one, and the adoption in areas where this is done well, not just the adoption, but the outcomes are really impressive. And the argument against this sounds like the argument against video interviewing when it first emerged. A lot of kicking and screaming, but ultimately, as the technology improves, as the approach improves, the process improves, the content improves, all of it improves. And generationally, folks are more native with the technology. The shift sort of takes place. I think that's what's happening with voice agents. That's what we're sort of at the beginning of in our HR world. The last thing I would put on the table, the fourth category, would be global payroll. So global payroll holistically, thinking about it holistically, but it's got to include payroll. So infrastructure that's solving the complexity of international compensation. Think about EORs, think about actual payroll itself, think about the additional services and capabilities that may be built around it. These are all in play and interesting, but payroll's got to be a part of that. So in 2026, the words that I use are intention and architectural rigor. That's a lot of what I'm out looking for on behalf of our partners. If your tech can't navigate sort of that last, you've seen me write about the last 20% of complexity and nuance with an auditable path, the value evaporates. And that's really where scale comes from. Having a well-defined problem that you're solving, a well-defined ICP, and an understanding of how to scale in product as well as in market, that's key. So wrapping up, if you're interested in engaging on any of these topics, I'm always up for a healthy conversation. If you're interested in an advisory engagement to help or submit some deal flow, that's also helpful. That's fantastic. Reply to the newsletter if you've got that, or book a 15-minute briefing through the link in the show notes or at oneworktech.com. And don't forget, before we go, to visit the Insights Hub at oneworktech.com. We've got deep dives into all the concepts that I've mentioned here quickly, and you don't want to miss those. We talked about vibe code versus the CHRO, why engineering for that last 20% is the only way to escape the new technical debt. The end of the recruiting black box, so how agentic AI is moving toward, more explainable experiences and process for candidates and employers, and the aperture trap. So for the vendors out there, why a broad TAM and focus is really a death sentence in 2026, and why you need a much more surgical approach to the market, and why your customers need you to have that. So hey, thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and until next time, we'll see you in the market.